My name is Dustin Armstrong. I'm a professional video producer in marketing. I also do a lot of freelance work that varies from wedding videos, social media content, YouTube videos, commercials, TV shows, all of it really. When I sit down with a client for a project, obviously I get their vision for the project, what their end goal is, what this video is going to be shown on, what resolution and format they're going to need, all of that. As a videographer, one of your most important tools is the camera you decide to use. This is not only going to affect the look that you want, but it's also going to affect the entire process that goes into that project from shoot to post. A lot of the time, I tend to gravitate towards Lumix cameras. The reason being is because they are just jam-packed with so many different features and settings that are useful depending on the direction and scope of that project. I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of the models, but they definitely have their advantages in different scenarios. For example, if I'm shooting more run and gun, I might choose the Lumix S5. Even with its convenient size, it's got dual image stabilization, so I can shoot a lot of it handheld. Since I'm trying to move quickly, I'll turn on zebras to help dial in my exposure. And one of my favorite things on that camera is I can change the shutter speed to read as shutter angle, so I don't have to worry as much about changing my shutter speed every time I change my frame rate. If I'm in a studio environment, I may decide to go with the BS1H. I can build that camera out a little bit more to fit the studio environment. Typically, I'll have more time to dial in my exposure, so I'll use a combination of luminance spot meter and waveform monitor to nail my exposure. There's gen lock in, so if I'm using multiple cameras on a long day of shooting, it's easy to sync them up, but I'll also use timecode as a safety net. I love the choice to shoot up to 6K open gate as well in case I want to punch in later, even if my final output for that project is 4K. Even if I want to get more creative with resolutions, I have the option to shoot in DCI 4K. Speaking of getting creative, maybe I'm shooting on the S1H for a project, but I'm on an anamorphic lens. There's anamorphic de-squeeze built in, so I don't have to rig up the camera with an external monitor to de-squeeze that footage on the go. I can also create a list of my favorite frame rates and codecs that filters out the ones I don't need for that shoot. So it's extremely convenient to adjust that on the fly. On more creative pieces, I typically like to change up the color grade as well. So if I'm shooting in Vlog, I will import my own custom LUT, so I know exactly what it'll look like when I get to post, and I only have to make minor adjustments. Since I'm talking about post-production, there's so many options the camera has to help simplify the post-production process, like I mentioned earlier with gen lock and timecode. I can also choose between long GOP or all eye. The camera also has dual native ISO, which really helps in post because when I go up into those higher ISO ranges, it helps the final image look much cleaner, and I don't have to add any kind of denoiser. Time is money in this field, and whatever tool I can use to help simplify the whole process is the tool I'm going to choose 95% of the time. On top of all the amazing features that these cameras have to offer, the image that these cameras produce, I think take the final product to the next level. It kind of sounds cliche, but what do Lumix cameras not have? That is the big reason I choose Lumix cameras. No matter what you're shooting or where you're shooting, Lumix has you covered.